All right, we're on. Yay, we're on. Hello, welcome to
Hello.
yet another episode of Witches and Wine. And I am your hostess with the mostest, Lola Stardust. We have here Silenus, our wine connoisseur. And before we get to our special guest that's looking dapper and so handsome waiting for us, Silenus is going to tell us about the wine. Go ahead and tell us about the wine we're drinking.
Well, tonight, guys, I chose a Bulgarian Cabernet. It comes from the Thracian Valley. It's called Bulgariana. Runs you about $15 a bottle, most places, if you can find it. The reason I chose it is it's a very elegant wine, and I thought that would match our guest, as well as he has some history, as you guys will learn about. And this wine, where the region it comes out of, is called the Thracian Valley, which is the oldest found wine press in the world was found in the Thracian Valley. So I kind of thought with some roots and going back in time that this would be appropriate.
And it's elegant.
And it's very elegant. Nice medium bodied cab, got some cherry notes, a little bit of blackberry, real soft, and a little minerality. So I'm going to go ahead and step out now.
Let's clink and drink to that. We always like to do our clink and drink. And it is excellent wine. Mm. Well, thank you, honey. You want to bring Iseline in?
So Iseline's going to replace me, and we'll see you guys next week.
Bye, sweetie. Thank you. Now we've got my co-host coming in. Hello. All right. So our guest is the wonderful and dapper Reverend Don Lewis, and our dogs are barking. And so, Don, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Well, I am Reverend Don Lewis. I am the Chancellor and First Priest of the Corellian tradition. At Candlemas, I will be celebrating my 40th anniversary as First Priest.
Wow.
More than my entire adult life.
Jeez.
I am the Chairman of Corellian Educational Ministries and also of Witch School, witchschool.com, which is our seminary. It is a legal seminary. We are also in the process of creating Corellian College, which will offer more in-depth study than the Witch School has done. I do not know when that will come online, but we're working on it. But within the next couple of years, I am the production head for Magic TV, magictv.com. I've taken a break of several weeks from that, but it will be coming back in the new year. I have been doing a daily vlog since 2010. And it got to the point I wanted to take a little bit of a break from that.
Yeah.
Although it had gone from 7 days a week to just 5 days a week.
Oh, wow.
I do a chat room on Monday night called Chancellor's Chat, which celebrated its 20th anniversary this year. And doing a chat room on Monday night for 20 years is also quite an interesting experience.
I bet.
We started it on about.com.
Okay.
In
cool. Okay.
1998.
Wow.
Then we brought it to the school when we created that platform. Witch School itself, it started as part of the Daily Spell, which is also in its 20th year.
Wow.
And the Witch School platform launched in 2001. And it had, I want to say 1,200 students on its first day who came over from the Daily Spell.
Jeez.
Almost around 300,000 students have come through the school.
Wow, that's amazing.
That doesn't mean they're all active at this exact moment, but during the 20 years of its existence. And one of the things I find most gratifying is when someone says, I've been gone for several years, but I want to start again. And we actually have quite a bit of that, which pleases me. I'm a member of the Icean Triad Union through the Grand Commanders Union, the Noble Order of Terra, and also an Archpriest of Isis within the Fellowship of Isis. I am the Vice President and former President of the Northeast Florida Pagan Leadership Coalition, otherwise known as NEFLPLIC. And
that's awesome.
And we are a coalition of local groups in Northeast Florida, ranging from Wiccan to Hellenic to Druidic to really any kind of local pagan group.
Yeah.
Including the local Cups group.
Oh, wow.
So we have quite a range of very nice people,
Mhm.
and a great many activities, including our Yule camp out yesterday,
Yep.
sponsored by Nefelplick and hosted by Whisperers of the Waters, which was a lovely overnight Yule vigil that I'm still recovering from. But it was fun.
Have you rested yet?
Yes,
Okay, that's good. That's good.
I think I got home around 8:30 this morning,
Mm-hmm.
and then I slept for quite a few hours.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I've done that
Yeah.
in past years, and the overnight vigils.
Those are tough.
I'm not as young as I once was.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun, though. That sounds like
It
fun.
was.
Yeah.
About half of the people who had registered were not able to come either because of illness
Mm-hmm.
or unexpected complications. So it turned out to be a small gathering, which was very nice in its own way.
Oh, yeah. More
Both
intimate.
are nice. Both
Yeah.
are nice.
Yeah.
More personalized.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the more formal things, normally, this has been going on for several years. Normally there is a ritual or presentation at the top of every hour, but we opted more for just visiting
Oh, that's nice.
with the smaller group.
Well, yeah. That's nice. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for giving us everything you do. You just made me like tired. I'm like, I need a nap after all of that because that's a lot of stuff. But that you are very much a big presence in the pagan community, and we're just really honored to have you as a guest. So what I want to ask you about is the Karelian tradition. I am not very familiar with it. I know that I've read a little bit about it, and I think it's pretty cool. But I'm not going to lie. I want to know more. So
Well,
can you tell us about that?
Let me tell you what I think is important, and then you can ask what I have not mentioned. Because having been a member of the tradition for all of my life, I don't necessarily see it in the same way that someone would who does not have a background in it.
Mm-hmm.
So the Karelian tradition is a familial tradition.
Familial, what does that mean to some of our...
It comes from a particular family, the High Karel family.
Okay.
The surname Karel is where it gets its name.
Okay.
Even now, it's still headed by the family, but it's open to anyone. And the highest offices are now open to anyone as well. We are more structured than many traditions, which has to do with our particular background and the customs of the family. The Karelian tradition considers itself to be Wiccan in the same way that Dianics are Wiccan, or many other simpler groups.
Yeah.
We come from a very different background than Gardnerians.
Okay.
But we use the term in the sense that it was coined by Cardell, which was more inclusive than what some people like to use it as.
Okay.
And we have been using the term Wiccan since the 1970s.
Okay.
The tradition became for want of a better way to say it, a public tradition as opposed to a familial tradition in 1979. Okay. But it already begun taking members from outside of the family for several years in the 70s before that happened.
Oh.
There are still a few people living from that era, not very many,
Mm-hmm.
but there are people who have been active in the Karelian priesthood longer than I have.
Yeah.
I was initiated as Karelian priest in 1976.
When you were 5?
No, I was 13.
What?
I was 13. I was very young.
Yeah, you were young. That's what very young.
Yeah. When I say I've spent my whole life doing this, effectively I have.
Yeah.
My mother, Leveda, was the head of the tradition from 1966 to 1979. She also wrote one of the formative Karelian works, The Five Mystic Secrets, mm-hmm. and a number of smaller works as well, but no large books. For myself, I think the thing that makes us, there are a lot of things that make us unique, but the emphasis on the ancestors is very important for us.
Yeah.
We're very big on oracle work,
okay.
Which is talking to the ancestors. We also believe in something called conscious reincarnation, which is where you program your next incarnation to carry on from where you will leave this one off.
So you said you program it?
You program it through meditation and through magic and through working after you have crossed with world walkers who stay in contact with the soul and help it to come back.
Wow, that's
really interesting.
Really cool.
It's a fairly advanced working, so
Yeah.
not a lot of people are doing it, but we're hoping to teach many people to do it over the course of time.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we talk about it in our third degree book.
Okay.
But if you were to interact with the tradition on a daily basis, you wouldn't see it so much because it is an advanced working. And it also coincides with people dying and being reborn. So somebody has to die to see it in action.
Yeah. One of my Coven sisters just asked, do you work with the Akashic records? Do you work with that, or is that?
Some of our people do.
Okay.
And some work with it more than others. We don't necessarily always use that term.
Oh, okay.
But we do work with it. We talk about that in the third degree as well.
Okay.
And we consider that to be a fairly important thing.
Mm-hmm.
But we also, our ideas about the soul and incarnation, when you get to the third degree level, are rather complex. We believe the soul is not just a larger version of the conscious mind. And we believe the soul can have overlapping incarnations.
Oh, cool.
Multiple versions of a given life.
Mm.
Actually, one of the first metaphysical teachings I remember hearing was my grandmother's teaching that if you don't like this life, repeat it. Although we would say that would be simultaneous.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're very big on the idea of the multiverse. We're fairly big on the idea of time magic, but time magic is a newer discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And there is, I think, a lot of exciting work going on with it, but slowly. So these are some of the things we focus on that...
It sounds scientific.
I think it's a little more science-based.
Science-based.
We're very fond of science.
I love that. Well, science and magic are interchangeable. I mean, so...
Oh, they really are.
It's just science. We
we
can't explain it.
Yeah, yeah.
And you'll notice science is coming much closer to things that we have said for years and years,
Mm-hmm.
Versus what they were saying 40 years ago.
Exactly.
One of the things I sometimes point out, because we talk a lot about climate change now, I remember being taught about climate change in the 1970s by metaphysical people
Mm-hmm.
who were using slightly different terms, but they were talking about it.
Yeah.
And even had maps of what they believed the world would look like afterward.
Yep.
Which are very close to maps scientific people now put out. But in those days, scientific people thought that it was nonsense. And we were a bunch of superstitious idiots.
Yeah.
And now they're saying what we were saying in the first place.
Of course.
And it's true about a number of other things. One of the things I actually, for Thanksgiving, I made a statement saying that you should be mindful of what you eat and grateful for the sacrifice the spirit of your food has made, whether it's animal or vegetable, because they all have spirit.
Absolutely.
And I had someone who was terribly upset about this.
Oh. Okay.
Because they only wanted to focus on the animals, not the plants.
Oh. Yeah.
And I pointed out, today science is talking about plants communicating with each other.
Absolutely.
And how they do this.
Yes.
And
true with mushrooms. Like
Yeah.
mushrooms absolutely communicate with
and very respectable scientific journals.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And this is something I never thought I'd see them saying.
Yeah.
But we've always said this. And they're talking about parallel universes and other things have been part of our belief through my whole lifetime. So I find that very interesting and very gratifying.
And you get to work with that in your tradition, and I really, that excites me so much, because I've always I've always had a vision in my head about parallel universes and them crossing over. I have this vision of discs of our time, like records spinning, but they overlap each other.
Venn diagrams.
That's a way to look at it.
Yeah, there you go. I use records because I love music, and so I everything is musical and records, but that's how so you saying that just hit a note with me, and I love that. That's amazing.
That's a very good way to represent it.
Yeah.
One of our teachings is that actually one of our most important teachings that is different from a lot of people is that everybody does magic all the time, unconsciously. And that when we learn magic, what we're really learning is not some new skill, but rather how to take conscious control of what has always been an unconscious skill for us. And it's also the same with the multiple dimensions. We would say that people cross back and forth constantly, but are not aware of it because it's happening at a soul level rather than the conscious level. But you can become conscious of it and control it.
And
it's a matter of discipline.
Do you teach becoming conscious of it, or how to look for?
We work with that in third degree. And individual clergy may work with it as they please.
Yeah.
But as a tradition, we tend to teach that in third degree because another point of view.
Yeah, higher level thinking, and so you want to make sure the people that are studying that are on a level that they're ready for it.
There's a lot of underpinning.
Yeah, and it, not to insult those that are just getting into their first degree or dedicancy or whatever, but there's a reason why we do it in levels, and so
there really is.
Yeah, absolutely.
One of the things that we do is we work with psychic exercises from the start, and they become progressively more complex. And we say that psychic skill is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Before you start dealing consciously with parallel dimensions, you want a pretty strong muscle.
Absolutely. You want it being buff.
Yes. I hear a lot of people who love to talk about the idea that magic is terribly dangerous, which I mostly don't agree with. But when we're talking about this, when we're talking about the level that you're pulling threads out of your understanding of reality, there is a certain danger. And that danger primarily is losing your place in reality.
Yes.
And
working that happened to people. Yeah.
You will see it.
Yeah.
If you work with psychics, you will see it a lot.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to happen if you don't have that underpinning, if you have not built that muscle. And sometimes even if you have to keep a strong sense of yourself. You have to keep a strong grounding.
I was going to say,
when you're working with that.
You have to be grounded, and because magic and our dream states, all those things that we travel somewhere else is addictive and can become very addictive. And we, being in the reality that we're in now, if you can go somewhere else, you want to stay there for a while. And so I think it's dangerous in that way, where there's some people that it's an escapism, but they need to realize that that's not for you to just hang out in that realm or whatnot. It's to visit, it's to get knowledge, it's to bring back that knowledge and come back to your mundane shell body, whatever. And so I can see why it's dangerous, because it's like a drug,
It can be.
Yeah.
And reality is so much more fluid than than ordinary people give it credit for. But dealing with that takes some preparation. Because if you just suddenly step through that door, you can be very disoriented.
Oh my goodness! Yes.
And you see those people on street corners all the time.
I was gonna say. That's why I said you see people like that. I think that people sometimes tend to downplay people who have maybe a schizophrenic mind. I think a lot of them are on a level and in some other realm that they just got maybe stuck there, and people just are like, oh, that's a crazy person. But I think they were able to travel somewhere, and then they just were like, I like this place better.
Or they didn't know how to get back.
Or they did, yes, yeah.
Another thing that we consider very important is shadow work.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
And
yep.
Yeah.
We are pro shadow work in this coven. If you can't get to your shadow work, you're not going to really go far into other places.
And one of the things that happens with those people that we were just talking about who've lost their place in reality, sometimes they're caught by their shadows that they have not dealt with.
Oh, yeah.
Which is why you need to do a lot of shadow work before you start trying that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
Coming from the background I came from, I thought that all traditions emphasized shadow work. I was really shocked when I realized how many people didn't do any.
There's a reason. There's a balance.
Well, because I've just been in a tradition where shadow work is important. So I just thought that everybody did that, but I have met people who don't. I don't know if it's because they're in a tradition that doesn't emphasize that, or if they're just in denial because shadow work is hard. And some people are like, I'm not gonna do it,
Well, that's true, and it can be scary because it's your shadow.
Yeah.
But I've noticed there are some traditions that don't have a clue what it is.
That's a little
at least in any real sense.
Yeah. That's kind of frightening because I think shadow work is the key to what we do as magical beings. I think in order to have that magic in our lives and to go to those places, you have to be good with who you are and the truths about yourself.
Well, and you can tell who's done their shadow work and who hasn't.
Absolutely. Yep.
And one of the things that I have seen in our community over the 40 years that I have been interacting heavily with it is an awful lot of infighting that you sometimes see between groups.
Can you expand?
And I think a lot of that has to do with lack of shadow work.
Can you expand on that?
Witch wars.
Yeah.
And we happen to be very blessed at the moment that there's a relative lack of that.
Yes.
And I think maybe it might have burned itself out finally.
That'd be nice. Yeah.
One of my biggest ambitions is to not see a recurrence of the identity wars of the 90s because I think they were terribly destructive.
Yes.
And a lot of that I think was fueled by lack of shadow work.
That makes sense. That makes total sense to me. Yeah.
But I think a lot of those people destroyed themselves through their own negativity as well.
Yeah. My husband has a question.
Wasn't that kind of start of the bubblegum witchcraft Wicca thing going on?
Like the fluffy bunny, like.
Well, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah,
the identity wars.
Well, actually, the ones I'm talking about are the ones who thought they were so great and wanted to eradicate other people's practices.
They thought they were what?
They thought they were very great.
Oh, okay.
Very learned.
Yes.
And you could tell they hadn't done their shadow work.
Well, yeah.
My attitude is that, if you meet someone who perhaps does not have as good a background as you might like, you try to educate them. You don't attack them.
Yeah.
The only person who would attack them is a person who has not done their shadow work.
Exactly. Well, and that's and that's where ego gets involved, and and unfortunately, because we are in a belief system in Wicca or an alternative religious belief system, there are no. I mean, we have our Wiccan Rede, and we have the Ordains and all that, but there's really no like in order to be this person or at this level, you need to do this, this, and this, unless you are in a coven or some sort of elevation. But you've got a lot of solitaire witches that are kind of trying to find their own way. And so it is kind of the honor system too. Like, have you done the work? Have you put in the work? And I don't think that's necessarily just for solitaire. I think that's for anyone. Mm-hmm. And you've got to be honest with yourself in order to reflect that, yeah, you've done the work. And there's a lot of people that are just want to climb the ladder really quick because it's easy to try to slip by. But the thing is you can't fool a witch. You might, you know what I mean? Like I've met people who are like, well, I've got this title and I've done all the work, and we're kind of looking at them going, maybe not, but it's really not our place to say that because they will learn their lessons that they need to learn. And I always find it humorous that they try to pull one over on the witches because the witches will know, So, yeah, it is difficult. It is difficult to get that kind of background and that grounding of someone who has done the work, put in the work, and walks the walk, talks the talk, kind of thing.
And I feel that brings a certain serenity to a person.
Is what?
It brings a certain serenity.
Yes.
when you've done the work.
Absolutely.
I was talking with the head of a different tradition a few months ago about the identity wars in the 90s, and pointed out that the leaders of the traditions were not fighting with each other.
Mm-hmm.
It was that unaligned community that was mostly having the war. The people who actually were heading organizations, who understood how much could be lost,
Yeah.
they were not fighting with each other. They were just kind of stepping back and letting it happen because nobody would listen anyway. But it was a very damaging period.
Do you think, because in the 90s, I was I graduated from high school in 1990, so I remember in the mid 80s to the 90s there was this whole new age being kind of lumped in, the new agers, the new age people being lumped in with Wicca. Do you think that had something to do with why there was identity wars or whatnot, because maybe people were hopping on the new age train or that whole thing? And because I just from my experience, I would go to we had new age bookstores everywhere, and that was the only place we could find books on witchcraft. And it was
absolutely
it was a very small section, but it was still there.
Yeah.
So it kind of got lumped into the same thing. So do you think maybe people are trying to separate themselves from that, or?
I do, and I think it was a bad idea. I think we would have been better to maintain better connections because it's a much richer community than our own.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what was that, honey?
A lot of the theories and concepts overlap with non-religious metaphysics compared to religious metaphysics.
Well, yeah, and
one of my favorite things is my great-grandfather. I don't remember what the context was, but there was some sort of topic that they were talking about. I was in an unconventional household, but his thing that sticks in my mind was New Age isn't new.
No, not at all.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's
New
true.
And neither is what we do.
What?
Neither is what we do.
No,
Yeah.
And paganism has been a constant in European history throughout the Christian period. One of the mistakes I think we make as a community is that we keep making these divisions in our history that we divide them more strongly than they should be divided. Modern Wicca has everything to do with Hermeticism and alchemy.
Yeah.
If you look at alchemy and you don't see Wicca, I think you're kind of blind.
Yeah.
Now, not the chemistry aspect, but the theology aspect.
Absolutely.
If you look at it, it's the relationship between goddess and god and the nature and evolution of the soul. That's what alchemy was all about.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they expressed it in male and female duality.
Mm-hmm.
I think that has a lot to do with what we do today. Hermeticism has even more to do with it.
Absolutely.
And certainly there are developments and offshoots and everything else. But to suggest that these things are not connected to each other makes us look like we're constantly new movements when we're actually aspects of older movements.
Yeah.
And I think that is a terrible mistake that we make.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think a lot of things become sort of like taking a milk crate out of the ocean, sticking it in the water, and then going, this water that's inside this milk crate is this thing.
Yeah.
That is the essence of the identity wars.
Yeah.
Right there.
Absolutely.
And if you ask me what caused the identity wars, I would say it was insecure leadership who, they were in their ego. Yep. They wanted to be more than they were.
Yep.
Like I say, they weren't the people heading actual organizations. They were low-level leadership who were insecure in their positions, which is still an issue, but less than it was, I think.
Yeah. They what? Huh?
There's a phrase called "stay in your lane."
Stay in your lane.
Well, I was always taught that the traditions should not criticize each other.
No.
So I was quite shocked by the 90s
I bet.
because it was totally different than what I was taught to do.
Well, and I think that, and there's still some of that. Well, we have to remember that this is a spiritual journey, and it's a very personal journey. So what works for me may not work for you, but we need to respect and honor that we are still on a path to be better people,
Exactly.
better versions of ourselves, be compassionate, share our knowledge. It doesn't matter if you've been doing this for 40 years or 4 years. We're always learning. And I think that's hard for some people. But it's a beautiful concept. And if you practice that, it's there's so much joy in it. But there are certain people that have a hard time with that because there is the ego and, oh, I know more than that person. And I know,
and also, it must be done exactly this way and only this way.
Yeah, and
that's the problem. I did a video with Therese DeVoe. I don't know if you're familiar with Madame Therese.
With
Therese DeVoe.
I don't think I've
formerly known as Therese Pendragon.
I know Pendragon, but I don't know. I don't think I've heard that particular name.
She is a Cabot witch and also an Alexandrian high priestess.
Okay.
She has been prominent in Salem since the 70s.
Okay.
She was a musical performer as well. And we did a series of videos with her. And they featured her artwork because that's what she wanted to talk about. And also what she was marketing at that moment, because Salem is all about marketing. Because that's what it is. And she does beautiful artwork. And she is a lovely person. But in one of these episodes, she talked about making tutus out of tulle. And she made the comment that witches love to get dressed up for festivals.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, and that's what I would say. But I had someone who commented on this, just outraged at the idea of witches wearing costumes for anything. And they had taught hundreds of students, they said. I hope that's not true, because they taught them badly if they did. But she went on to show that she had no experience outside of her narrow lane. Because anyone who's been in this community, anyone who's ever been to a festival has seen people wearing costumes.
Absolutely.
If you know the Cabots at all, they're very popular, which is lovely in my opinion. Many traditions are very big on festival dressing, for want of a better way to put it. But this person was outraged by the idea of costuming, for want of a better word for it, of cosplay. And I didn't say anything at the time. But this is the problem. Their background was so narrow that they had not looked at anything else. I was really lucky to be taught by Lady Crystal and my mother and others who taught me, because they always said, look at everybody. And so I went out and I worked with many different backgrounds. I saw many different ceremonies. I went to many different things. And I went without judgment because I hadn't been taught to bring judgment.
Absolutely.
And I saw so many wonderful different ways of doing things that I was very inspired by it. And the idea that it would shock or horrify someone makes no sense to me. But it does.
Don't you find it interesting that a lot of Wiccans have a background of being in a Christian religion, like as children, and they want
usually evangelical.
What?
I think for the people you're about to talk about, it's usually evangelical Christian.
Yes, and they want to escape that judgment that they were exposed to in a Christian religion, but then they come into Wicca and there's judgment in it, like judging why someone wears a certain thing at a festival. I find that just a little ridiculous, but I mean...
Well, it's more than a little ridiculous.
Yeah.
But you're exactly right. They want to escape that and then immediately recreate it. And why do they do that? They did not do their shadow work.
Thank you.
If they'd done the shadow work, they would have healed that and been able to let it go.
Yep.
But because they didn't, it comes right back in front of their face because it's the lesson they must learn.
Let's clink and drink the shadow work. Clink and drink the shadow
Shadow
work. Woohoo, clink and drink.
Okay. Tell him what you're.
I had another person
Well, my
who,
old coven I came from, we, my elder, I remember, I had heard about shadow work. I was going through a lot of it as a dedicant. I was starting to go through it, and I learned a lot of shadow work, and I'm very open about this, so this isn't surprising. But I had addiction problems in my 20s. I'm in my 40s now, but I had addiction problems, and I went to recovery programs and rehab, and they teach you shadow work because in order to get over your addiction, you need to face those demons and those parts of yourself that keep you going back to that drug or whatever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's how you heal. And so I was familiar with it, but I remember he told me, we were taking a walk. We were at my first Hecate sickle. This was 5 years ago, and we took a walk because there was some shadow work I needed to do. And he said, he worded it so wonderfully. He said, "You just need to own your shit." I mean, he didn't sugarcoat it or anything. It was like, own your shit. And I related to that because that's my language. I'm like, yeah, own your shit. And that's what we say in our coven. We're just like, own your shit, just own it. And it's hard to do.
It makes a tremendous difference.
What?
It makes a tremendous difference.
Yes, it does. It does.
For us, we feel that the strongest form of shadow work that we use is soul retrieval. Although we do it differently than some others do it, but it's the same concept. We believe that as you go through life, you lose bits of your energy or your soul, if you would, in traumatic events. And this is not something that stops just because you learn about it. You always have to stay on top of it.
It's an ongoing process. It really is. So we could talk all night about shadow work, but I want to jump to our next topic.
Very good.
I would love you to talk about the witch school.
Okay.
Can you? Because we are students of the Wiccan seminary, and so we know about witch school. We've dealt with you. We've seen it.
I have a guest account on there. I just haven't signed up for any of the. I missed out on a good deal on the lifetime membership, and I have regrets. And we cross promote. We're ATC Wiccan, but you're
very close to ATC.
You're ATC affiliated. We are covered.
Well, no, but we have a long-standing alliance.
Yes. Okay, you're not affiliated. You're just.
No, we're a totally independent organization.
Oh, okay.
But we have a long friendship, first with Pete and now with Belladonna.
Yes, absolutely. And you guys are, what do you call each other? You guys are family. You're
yes, cousins.
Like cousins. That was yes.
The term that was chosen.
Yes, I love that. So
and Corellians are often very similar in attitude to Aquarians.
Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about the witch school?
Well, we started the witch school, as I say, it started first as an aspect of the daily spell. Back in the 90s, and it's actually Edward who would give you the fuller explanation of all of this. But,
Ed Hubbard?
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be a different interview.
Pagan Ed? Isn't he the one known as Pagan Ed?
Yes, Ed the Pagan.
Ed the Pagan.
He got that name from a radio host in the 90s.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
He called in frequently, and paganism was discussed, and the host started introducing him as Ed the Pagan, and he picked it up and has kept it.
Yeah, I love that.
But he started the daily spell. There was also daily goddess. There was daily tarot. There was a whole range of them.
Daily,
and I think it was on one list originally. Later went to Yahoo, and it was daily things. And the daily spell originally was just what it sounded like. You got a spell a day.
Yeah.
However, doing something like this is not the easiest thing in the world. Doing anything daily is not easy.
I know.
And so the decision was we would put the lessons that were being taught through Holy City Temple at that time and had been developed for the tradition. We would put them out through the daily spell for anyone who wanted to see them. And if they actually wanted to pursue initiation, that there would be a series of tests they could take and so forth, and they could follow that. But initially, it was just like 1/8 or 1/4 of a lesson each day, and people get it in their mailboxes,
Oh.
and it improved their email boxes, obviously.
Oh, yeah. I was like,
although we did try, huh?
I was
Well,
like,
there used to be a lot of correspondence schools.
Yeah.
That actually worked through mail, and we had considered at one point opening one of those, but that was in the 80s.
Yeah.
But in the 90s, we were doing this, and it became very popular. And we realized that that platform was not going to serve the audience. People were coming in hundreds.
Yeah.
And we realized there was a great thirst for information.
Absolutely.
And we already knew that people who wanted to study could not find teachers in many areas. In some cases, that was because people were so deeply closeted. In others, it was because there really was no one around.
Yeah, yeah.
I had people contact me not at that time, but later, saying that they could not find their local community. Where were they? They were in Chicago. There was a huge community in those days in Chicago.
Yeah.
But if you didn't know where to look for it, it was hard to find.
Yeah.
The internet is easy to find.
Yeah.
And so we started the school largely for that reason, to bring teaching to people who could not get it.
Yeah.
We had a lot of people with various disabilities, some who could not leave their house, some who could not leave their bed.
Absolutely.
But they could study it in this way. We had people who lived in remote rural areas who had no local temples that they could find to study at. And of course, we had people in urban areas who could have found a real temple, but for whatever reason did not. Some people were afraid to go out in person looking for a temple because, in those days, you kind of had to take what you found, and it wasn't always good.
Yeah.
We had a temple in Chicago when we were doing Holy City, actually Temple of the Lake. When we were doing Temple of the Lake, we had a refugee from another temple, which was not part of the general community, but it was a bondage temple.
Oh, interesting.
And he was very upset because the high priestess had promoted him to 3rd degree, but only because she wanted to sleep with him.
Of course.
And he did not want this. It was particularly interesting that it was a man, because it's usually women who are in that position.
Yeah.
But we've met plenty of those over the years too.
Yeah.
We are very strong on not doing anything like that.
Yeah.
The Karelian tradition is a familial tradition in that sense still.
Yeah.
When you're learning from your mother
Yeah.
or your cousin, you don't do those things.
Absolutely.
It's not that we disapprove of the sexual mysteries.
No.
They certainly have their place.
There has to be what do you call it? Agreement between both parties.
Yeah.
Consent.
Consent.
Yes. Consent. Yes.
Everyone should know ahead of time, and they should know it's not the only option available.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I notice we're getting some feedback. Is that happening for you or just for me?
We have no feedback here.
Okay, I'll just continue then.
Okay.
I can spawn here too. So, we've done another thing we did was Blog Talk Radio. We did Pagans Tonight Radio, and it is also taking a brief break before reopening in February.
Okay.
But we've had daily programming for many years. I'm not quite sure what the number of years now, but we've had a wide range of hosts, including Selena Fox and Oberon Zell, Jason Mankey, many interesting people.
Oh, nice.
But we're planning to open a new and improved version in February.
That's exciting.
And so your witch school, how do you? What is the length? Is it like at Wiccan Seminary we do freshman, sophomore, senior, or we skipped junior apparently. Sorry, I've had a little.
Skipping my year.
we were set up in the same way you would have temple training, 1st, 2nd, 3rd degree, and also a large number of classes that are outside of the degree system.
Okay.
We had, and not all the classes are Corellian. You can study many other belief systems as well. We have classes on Kabbalah. We have classes on.
I look at your class listings, and I'm like, that's pretty awesome. Yeah.
And we're in the process of rebuilding the school as well. And
Okay.
we're hoping to expand that and improve that as we go forward. But from the start, we wanted to have a wide range of different teachings from different backgrounds. Because I found for myself, being able to see many different backgrounds was vitally important to understanding the community.
Yeah.
I'm still, I mean, going back to that whole thing about how some people believe it's such a narrow little thing that everything must be the same.
Yeah.
For me, it's a joy to see people do things differently.
Absolutely. You learn too. You
and
learn.
if you were, oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, I know. I was just saying, you just learn from seeing how other people do their worship or
You
what.
can get great ideas.
Absolutely, yeah.
Monocultures are not a good thing, whether it's people or plants.
Yeah.
Yes. If you were to go to a Corellian temple, and of course they're all different, and Corellians in different parts of the world are different too. In the Philippines, there is a lot more traditional Filipino practice in a Corellian temple than, for example, in Florida. Some of our South American temples include a lot more traditional practice.
Yeah.
But this is part of the idea. It's an individual path, even though it is a specific tradition.
Yeah.
But most Corellian temples, you'd find the rituals very laid back and always different.
And that's important because, well, and this is interesting because we were looking at our community, just our local community, why people come to ritual and why they don't come, and we had both. Yeah, and that was interesting because we took the feedback from them, and sometimes the laid back, and I always find the more laid back, if you do something public, make it comfortable for people. But
Yes.
There's people that show up that are like, I want the whole experience. I want it to be, the fireworks and the bowing down and the kissing of the feet and whatever. And it's like, well, there's a time.
I found the fireworks can be kind of dangerous.
Fireworks would be cool.
It was just that one time we left the black spot on the scene.
Well, yeah. And so you can't please everyone. What is it? You can't please. What's the saying? You can't please everyone all the time.
Can't please all of the people all of the time.
Thank you. That, yes. So, well, I'm looking at our time, so I don't mean to rush you, but I want to squeeze in one other thing. Magic TV that's on YouTube. Is that correct?
Magic TV is on YouTube. We also load new videos on Facebook.
Okay.
And now that platform is available, there may be more in the future, but the primary one is on YouTube.
And you said you took a break from that for a little while, and
we did the Global Wicca Summit in September.
Yes.
And I actually have taken a break from Magic TV since then, which is the longest break I've ever taken.
Yeah.
But it will be coming back.
Do you remember you and I were on the Pagan radio station together?
Yes.
That was really fun. I enjoyed that very much. The Global Wicca Summit was amazing. I got to do that, help out with Sacred Cauldron on Second Life, and
yes, indeed.
So that was really an honor to be on that with
and
you.
we appreciated all your hard work very much.
It was wonderful. It was wonderful. So Magic TV.
And it was a wonderful experience.
Oh, it was really great. And we watched. I watched that was taken to the. What was it? The pagan.
The Parliament.
Thank you, Parliament.
Yes.
World Religions. Thank you.
And that was a wonderful experience too. I wasn't sure what to expect.
How was it for you? Was it just everything you thought it would be, or?
Yes, actually. Well, no, it was much better than I thought it would be.
Good. That's always good. Yeah.
It was more like what I hoped it would be.
See, there you go. That's awesome.
I went in not knowing to what extent the identity wars remain something that might resurface, but nobody there wants to see a repeat of that nonsense.
No, absolutely not. And
And that was very encouraging.
what an honor to have our religion represented by such a great panel, and you, that was you and Selena Fox and Belladonna and Dusty
Phyllis Curott.
and Phyllis Curott,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Well, Phyllis was not on that panel, but she was at the Parliament.
Okay.
Yeah, she was at the Parliament.
And
I saw one of her things.
yeah, it was just great. And we were complaining earlier about technology.
Yes.
Because this is our second attempt, which is going so successful, and I'm very, very happy. But
Yes.
the wonders of technology is to bring us that couldn't be there and watch what you guys were doing, and that is such a huge part in our religion,
Yes.
because we need to see that. We need to see. I mean, it really affected me in an emotional way to see it represented my religion that I love so much, represented in such a positive way, and to people who aren't familiar with it. And
Yes.
that really, you guys did wonderful. You did
Thank
awesome.
you.
And
Speaking of Magic TV,
yes.
The reason we started doing Magic TV, and it's similar to the reason for the school, but it was so that people could vicariously attend these events, could receive vicarious teaching that they didn't have to be there in person for, but they could see the person in the days before video conferencing was a big thing.
Yeah.
So that they could see our leadership, not just read their words. We did interviews with the late Olivia Robertson of the Fellowship of Isis, which I think conveyed her personality very nicely.
Yeah.
The late Morning Glory Zell,
Mm-hmm.
so a number of other people who have since passed.
Yeah.
In some cases, they had not done other interviews.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've done interviews with a lot of local people who have had no other occasions to be interviewed in many cases.
Yeah.
And we feel that this is, in addition to being something that allows people to feel more connected to their community, also a historical archive that's very important.
Absolutely.
Incredibly important.
We also have a number of videos that are on old VHS tapes that have never made it to Magic TV.
Oh, wow.
That include people like Donna Kohlschultz, who has passed some years ago. She was also known as Morta, a Gardnerian, very, very prominent Gardnerian high priestess. Rael Bassan, who is prominent in the Chicago area.
Yep.
And a number of other people who hopefully will one day be transcribed over for the internet.
It's kind of like what we do here on Witches and Wine. We wanted to combine that whole sitting in the living room with your friends who are pagan or witchy, or even of some sort of occult kind of belief, something that's different than the mainstream, and we can all just sit and talk and find out. And so to us, this is such an honor to have you, and I hope maybe someday we can be on. I'm going to give us a plug.
That'd be wonderful.
Be on Magic TV. You know, we can work out the technology.
We can certainly do that.
But I want to wrap us up because we're coming up. That we could talk to you for hours and hours, but we talked about the attention span of people.
Well, that's true. That is a thing.
Is there anything else you want to add? You want to promote? You want to say?
Well, I think the main thing I would say is watch for the return of Pagans Tonight Radio and Magic TV in the new year. Watch for the rebuild of the school, although it's fully functional right up until, but we are trying to update the technology.
Yeah. Technology.
We will, as we always do, we'll go to many different events during the course of the year, and they will appear on Magic TV and Facebook.
That's awesome.
Because we know that people can't necessarily come themselves, but this gives them a way to experience.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing that I would say, which we've already said, is how important it is not to wear blinders, but to see the community in all of its diversity as a wonderful and beautiful thing that it is. If we were all alike, we'd be terribly bored.
Right? I'm going to clink and drink. And we all emptied our glasses, but we'll still clink and take drinks. There you go. We go through a couple glasses during the episode. So, well, thank you so much. This has been such an honor, and you have been so
Thank
patient while we tried to figure out how to get this going, and we really appreciate this. Thank you so much. And we have to do our little spiel. If anyone out there would like to be a guest on our show, you can always email us at
crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
What was that again?
crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
So in the meantime, remember to be kind to one another, walk with the goddess, and until next time, blessed be. Goodbye, everybody. And we'll just end this call here. Stop recording. That's what I'm doing.